Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. And today we're back for another Mid Monday. We're here. The Midsize Princess is here. And I'm a little bit busted today. This has been one of the worst days I've had in a long time. This is Saturday, but I've been enjoying this sweater or this jumper when I've been doing the Midsize Princess. And I'll probably switch to my Elsa blue shirt when it warms up, but I like this one for Midsize Princess. But anyways, we're gonna go ahead and get into this. Remember, I am not attacking the person. This is no shade on the person. It's just shade on some of the ideas, and it's something to think about. It's something that I need to think about because there are certain tropes that I could see myself getting too caught up in. And as I stated before, these types of statements, in some cases, they can be demotivating for bigger people and stuff. Like, I think we do have to consider how we talk about weight loss. And I'm not saying that I'm ever going to be perfect, but I will say that I will try. That's all. And that's what these videos are about. Gosh, my shoulders are like up to my knees. Can you guys tell I'm tense today? Can you tell? Can you tell I had a bad day? Can you tell? No one cares. No one cares about me. No one cares that I had a bad day because I'm fat. No, I'm just kidding. So I used to be fat, so no one cares. Anyways, that's just Midsize Princess nonsense. Let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to reload this and then we'll get into it. I'm going to let it play and then we'll cover it piece by piece. This one has a lot. But remember, I'm not shading the girls today. I'm not shading them. This isn't shade.
People don't talk about things like this after weight loss, but I want to talk about it. Obviously, when I was almost 300 pounds, I had so many health conditions, so many health issues. Like, I would never want that back. Like, I'm so much healthier now and I can move my body freely without feeling restricted because of my weight. But I almost felt as my physical health was improving, my mental health started declining. That's why I feel like it's like mental, then nutrition, then your workout and exercise. Like, this needs to be in check before this. This needs to be checked before this. Imagine you felt invisible because you're in a bigger body and people didn't pay attention to you, but you feel even more invisible now because a lot of people do pay attention to you, but they only see you for what's on the outside. And imagine feeling only lusted over to the point where you feel unworthy of love. Imagine how we feel when people constantly degrade our past selves as if we're not the same person. Imagine friends that used to hype you up and empower you all of a sudden start telling you you're doing too much and start acting weird towards you and even maybe a little jealous towards you. Imagine having such bad trust issues because the way you get treated now by society is night and day from how you used to be treated. All I can do is continue to heal and continue to be a kind person to everyone I meet, regardless of how they look. Okay,
so there's a lot there. There's a lot. What I will say to start with is I think the biggest thing is you have to let this go. There's a lot of things here that I think are difficult to let go of. And I think that is certainly what I'm using the mid-size era for. The Midsize Princess era is I'm trying to get over these things. You know, I told you guys, one of the things that I've struggled with a lot in the mids is rage. I've been really angry a lot. And I think part of it has to do with a little bit of a weakened identity or a feeling of my identity being slightly attacked. And I think it leads to a lot of the defensiveness that I see in this video. And I think it's something to consider in this phase and in general if you still have a lot of these mindsets, because having trust issues about weight and stuff like that when you've already lost the weight, I just don't think is productive. So I will say that to start with, but let's break it down piece by piece. There's a lot here in this one.
I feel like a lot of people don't talk about things like this after weight loss, but I want to talk about it. Obviously, when I was almost 300 pounds, I had so many health conditions, so many health issues. Like, I would never want that back. Like, I'm so much healthier now and I can move my body freely without feeling restricted because of my weight. But I almost felt
That's on point. That's great. And I'm glad she said that. And that's the thing about a lot of these videos I see. I don't think the people are like really coming from a bad place. Or sorry, I just wanted a better pause space for her. I don't think they're coming from a bad place at all. I think that there is often a good intention that obviously I don't see a lot in a lot of fat acceptance content. That's why it's like I do have to be a little bit more princessy when I do these videos, because it's like I don't feel that sense of we're in a chapel era. I don't feel that sense of evil when I'm watching these videos. And I do think it's coming from a good place, but I think that it's still important to think about, I guess, the impact. I don't know. I'm trying to explain it. It's this series is a little tough for me.
as my physical health was improving, my mental health started declining. That's why I feel like it's like mental, then nutrition, then your workout and exercise.
So your physical health is declining, or your physical health is improving, your mental health is declining. I think it's really important to check with yourself and make sure that you're not attached to having a problem. Because I see that happening. I can see it happening in myself a lot. So as certain issues resolve, you can start to look for the P, the princess and the P to be upset about. You can start to look and look and look because you're so used to living in a state of resistance, especially coming from a dieting perspective, especially a long haul weight loss perspective. A lot of people, myself included, often try to lose weight through a sense of resistance. And that resistance can be something that we hold on to past its point. So just make sure it's not something totally psychological and not necessary that you're just holding on to. If there is like some underlying issues, that's different. But if it's specifically about weight and specifically about the weight loss, make sure that you're not just holding on to a problem.
Exercise, like this needs to be in check before this needs to be checked before this.
So I don't necessarily agree with this. I think there is this idea in a lot of weight loss spaces that mental health and physical health are disconnected. I don't agree with that at all. I think that they completely overlap all the time. And especially in weight loss, it can be incredibly difficult to separate the two, mental health issues from physical health issues, as obesity, the excess fat on your body, is a living organ. It produces hormones that affect your mood. It affects a lot of different other hormones and interactions that do affect your mood and can even affect your personality, honestly, which people don't want to say that, or a lot of people, they get very uncomfortable when you say that, but it's true. That's why when you look within fat acceptance, you can see a lot of trends where people kind of sound exactly the same. And I know that the rhetoric is the same and it's all kind of like fed, but sometimes even like the personality can become the same when you're like super morbidly obese, because the fat in and of itself is like taking over your personality. I think a similar thing can happen throughout weight loss too. As you come from a very big size and you come down, it can lead to I've seen a lot of people have self-esteem issues during the process, and I honestly think there is a hormonal connection. For example, I constantly, at nighttime, I feel like I'm deathly single and I will never have anybody. And like I have all these very strong like negative feelings about being single at night, every night, for no reason. Like it's like even if nothing's happening or whatever, I still have been going there like every single night. And it's like, I think it's a little bit hormonal. I think I just feel kind of like at night. And then I think about like, why do I feel that way? And then I focus on that. So it's like, even though like logically and in my brain, I don't I can't say that I don't care about it. That's not true. I do care about being single, but it's like I care, honestly, I care more about my activism than that, which I know that's kind of a weird thing to say, but it's just, for me personally, when I had my, kind of, I wouldn't even say kind of, when I had my near-death experience that lasted 2 years, it was very crazy. It's very weird to have like a long-term thing where your health declines so rapidly and then you have to kind of climb back out, which I did in 2020 and 2021. It changed my perspective a lot on a lot of different things. I was very superficial before that time, and I came out of that experience with having wrestled with questions of why do I go on? Why do I not? What is life worth living for, right? Like I thought about a lot of very deep things because I had to fight to live, and you have to know why you're doing it. And so for me, it was like I didn't necessarily know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to change something, basically. And in 2022, I finally focused on this. And I think it was, obviously for me, I think in general, I think it was one of the best decisions I ever made. And it's really held near and dear to my heart. So in my heart of hearts, I don't care that much about being single. Like I care more about this. I do care about it, but it's not enough where I could be like really sad about it every single night. It's just not necessarily real. And I think that that's what you have to kind of get a grasp on. And I think it's really hard, especially in the mids, because these hormonal nudges, they're not necessarily loud, like in super morbid obesity. It could be a very slight nudge, and I feel it very slightly, because why do I think about it every night at the same time? It's something cyclical in my hormones. So you have to look at, is something happening there, and don't create an issue for why you feel that way. If you just feel that way and it's not really explained and it's the same time every day, and it could be the time of the year, it could be this, it could be that. Like if there's some kind of cyclical aspect to it, especially circadian rhythm wise, it may be hormonal, which means you shouldn't necessarily feed into it. So as I was saying, it can be really hard to separate the two. That being said, obviously if you have toxic ritualistic behaviors and mindsets, those will undermine any weight loss effort you have. If you have other trauma, other comorbidities, you probably have to work on those too, but they're irrelevant to your weight, especially if you have trauma that is like literally something that happened to you or whatever that you need to deal with. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your weight. And if you conflate it too much, that could be a part of a EFA by the letter D, which again is something you have to get rid of to have, in my opinion, a fertile ground for sustainable weight loss. So I'm just saying I don't necessarily agree, because I think it's an impossible goal to feel perfectly mentally healthy when you're super morbidly obese. I just don't think it can happen. And I feel like somebody at a bigger size will hear that and they'll be like, yeah, I need to get it together. And you can kind of get into this phase where you can start chasing your own shadow. And I saw this with Rosie, Quirky Love Rosie, that channel. She's kind of chasing her shadow with all this therapy, and she's not getting to the actual mental health issue that has to do with her weight, which is EFA by the letter D. So I guess what I'm trying to say is don't use mental health as a distraction, because A, if you have other comorbidities, it may not have to do with your weight. B, if it's just all emotions and there's nothing happening to you, it literally could be the weight itself. It could be a hormonal issue. And C, the most common and prevalent and important mental health issue regarding your weight will be EFA by the letter D. So don't get too caught up in that. As far as nutrition and exercise, I do agree nutrition is probably more important than exercise. But as far as like a deficit, sometimes it can be better to start exercising before a deficit. It really depends on the person, as exercise helps with satiety in the long term, not the short term, but in the long term, especially with carb metabolism and stuff like that. So it can actually be helpful to a lot of people if you are somebody who never exercises and you're trying to lose weight and you've tried to get your nutrition in order 50 bajillion times and it's never worked, then maybe just try to stick towards those real foods and then exercise first. And exercise in and of itself can boost dopamine and create more of a motivation to actually lose the weight if you're struggling with a physical issue. So I just wanted to kind of add a little bit of feedback to that part. Let's continue.
Imagine you felt invisible because you're in a bigger body and people didn't pay attention to you, but you feel even more invisible now because a lot of people do pay attention to you, but they only see you for what's on the outside.
So this is very important to consider, and I think I really probably would have suffered with this badly if I would have lost the weight at a young age. Basically, the only way to prevent this, in my opinion, is to do a lot of identity building during the process, and especially in the mids, which I'm still doing myself. I have to do some identity building during this time, which is really annoying. Sorry, I know that's bad to say, but again, I'm a mid-sized princess. I complain, okay? It's really annoying. It's not something I want to do. I think it's kind of cringy to do it in your 30s. It is embarrassing to me to have to do that now. But like, especially if you're in your 20s and younger, it's like you're already identity building. 30s and older, I know it can be kind of cringe to have to do it, but you kind of have to, because I feel like having a sense of identity that's stronger, it can protect you from these types of issues, because these are very interpersonal issues that she's getting into now. So I think it's really important to consider building a stronger identity, which it takes effort. I hear a lot of people say, I want to find myself, blah, blah, blah. You don't find yourself, you build yourself. And for me, as this fat part of my identity, as the part of my identity that has to do with being fat is going away, I have to fill that in. So I'm doing that process now to the best of my ability while I'm in this phase. And that's what I would suggest to people, because yes, once you're thinner and if you are pretty and everything, which I think she's very pretty, then you could get a lot of attention. And if you don't have roots, it can be really tricky. So I would definitely consider working on that. You can work on that the whole way through the weight loss, but it's just sometimes in the other phases you have to focus on other aspects, which is also what I suggest doing. Like, you need to focus on the issue at hand. With like in super morbid obesity, it's the physical issues, getting your routine down. I call it the SMO Eras tour. You know, you have to get your routine down, be strategic, have your on season, off season. You have to do all the rituals and everything to get out. It's very difficult on a physical level. And then tortured Mo, which is like you have to struggle with these questions of, can I ever find somebody? Can I ever lose the weight completely? You know, all these tortured questions and things from feeling behind in life through being super morbid for so long. That's important to work on those things. And within a toxic ritualistic sense, you have to work on those triggers during that time so that you're stronger, so that when you get to the small fat era, you can focus on moving and pushing yourself motivation wise. It's a lot more willpower focused in that phase. I called it my brat era, but for some of you guys, it would be your short and sweet era, your Sabrina Carpenter era. You have to kind of really use a lot of your energy for motivation. And now in the mids, I'm like, okay, I can prioritize identity building because my routine is solid. I know I can lose the weight. I'm not tortured. I'm not worried about being single or not. Like, it just doesn't, things just don't cut as deep now as they used to. And I'm motivated. I don't have to worry about the motivation. So this is when personally I would at least suggest doing it here if you haven't earlier. This is where I can do the identity building. And I think for a lot of people, this would be where they could, because all the other issues are just so much less, you know? And I know it's hard in the Midsize Princess era to admit that things are better, but they just genuinely are better. Like, it's easier. Everything is easier as far as weight loss. I'm not anywhere near as hungry as I was even like 2 or 3 months ago. It's pretty wild. So it just gets easier on all the other levels. So I think this is a good time to focus on that. And like I said, I find it kind of cringy in my 30s. I don't like that I have to do this, but again, there are aspects of being overweight that unfortunately, you know, they do, it affects you psychologically too. And it can affect you in an identity way too, especially if you had toxic ritualistic behaviors. It really can. And I don't think everybody has a mid-sized princess era, but I'm working on a list of like what puts you at risk, because by the end of the era, I want to like really break it down, because it's kind of like a midlife crisis. It's like not everybody has a midlife crisis. Not everybody has a mid-sized princess era, you know? So I'm still working out my theories in my mind, but some working theories are being overweight for a very long time, having toxic ritualistic behaviors, and there's some other ones I'm working with, but those are just some like basics. Still formulating my thoughts, but it's like, yeah, it takes work. There's a lot of work in especially long haul weight loss and extreme weight loss. There's a lot of work. So I would really suggest identity building. Of course, you can do that when you're thin now. You know, if you've lost weight, you can do it now. You can do it whenever. You know, it's just, I talk about it in terms of these eras because I think from my standpoint, those different aspects of those eras are what was the most important thing to focus on at the time. And I kind of build on each thing. So, yeah. Those are some thoughts. Let's continue.
Imagine feeling only lusted over to the point where you feel unworthy of love.
So I think that could be hard, especially within being fat. Oftentimes, which we've seen a lot of fat activists, this is coming right out of fat acceptance rhetoric, but there's a lot of fat activists that will be like, one of the best things about being fat is that I can see who's shallow and who isn't. I can see who cares about me for who I am rather than what I look like. I think that it's not necessarily true, but it's something that you believe. I think people still judge you based on how you look, even when you're bigger, obviously. But I think that you have to kind of like, you have to understand that how you, let me put it to you this way. Sometimes when you're super morbidly obese, people will try to take advantage of you in that state too. It's not actually safe socially. So I think it's important to kind of carry that into the mids and beyond and realize like, we don't have to be super harshly guarded always, but we do have to have some boundaries always, no matter what size we are, because that's not really true. You can be taken advantage of at any size. You can be lied to at any size. You can be judged for your appearance at any size. I do understand what she's saying in terms of like getting attention and like romantic attention and things like that. And I think for me, one of the things that I may grieve losing is a lot of times when I would talk to people, especially when I was super morbidly obese, there was zero mask. People would just tell me stuff all the time because they did not give a fuck about what I thought. And I will say, as I've lost weight, in some ways I have become a little bit more intimidating and people do wear more of a mask. And I was especially experiencing that romantically when I was like, I have to take a breather, like I can't handle this right now. On the apps and all that, I was like, I gotta get out of here. Like, this is too much, because it was just hard because it was happening. It happens, like, I think people don't understand sometimes, like, when I talk about these social shifts, like, they happen across the board. It happens online, happens with you guys, my audience, it happens with in person, it happens with family, with friends, like all these different things. It happens at the same time. So something I've been dealing with a lot is projection and people feeling defensive towards me. And it's like, whoa, that's weird. Because for me, when I was super huge, it was just like, well, what does it matter what you think? It doesn't matter. Who cares? I'll just say whatever. I'll just do whatever. Now it's not like that. Now it's like, I do see people putting on more of a mask with me. I can still see through it. Honestly, I'm a very perceptive girly pop. So I'm like, I can see through it, But it is interesting to see people try. And that has changed for me. So I feel like I can see kind of what she's talking about too, like in that sense. Or like I can understand where that's coming from, even from this vantage point of where I'm at. And I still, you guys know, I'm mid. I consider myself pretty mid. Like, at least in a body sense, my body is just very mediocre. And so I guess we'll see how it changes. It should be interesting because I don't plan on staying mid forever. So I'll see how it gets in the future too. But that's stuff that I've noticed a lot, is there is a little bit more of a barrier. And I find that I do have to put more effort towards connecting with people because people have more of a wall up with me than they did when I was bigger. So I could kind of really know somebody much quicker and easier when I was bigger. And that's interesting. So there's a lot more social exertion now. But again, is that a bad thing? Is it a good thing? It's not a bad thing. I think it's important to put effort towards relationships and getting to know people and empathizing and these types of things. I don't think this phase is necessarily bad for someone like me. I think it's probably good. But I think for somebody who's more people pleasery, it could be really difficult because you could be like, why don't you like me as much? Or why is this happening? Or why are you pulling away from me? Or why are you this? Why are you that? Like, for me, it's like, it's the same thing with the pressure to be more optimistic in the mids. I could see somebody that's a people pleaser feeling like they have to be completely positive all the time. Like, I'll never feel that way. So, whereas like me being a little bit more positive, it's actually really balancing and good. Just like me putting more effort towards social stuff, it's really good for me as somebody who's super introverted and sometimes lazy socially. I'm going to be real. Like, I have to, that's part of, I think, this phase too, is you have to be really real about some of your personality deficits that you can work on. And that's one of them. I can be very lazy socially. So, yeah, I know this is a lot that I'm saying during this, but these are the kinds of things that she's making me think of. So let's continue.
Imagine how we feel when people constantly degrade our past selves as if we're not the same person.
So I don't think that's necessarily the right mindset to have. I don't think it's good to have people degrade your past self, obviously. Like, I think that's really weird. But what I think is important is to not internalize it, because we can't control what other people say. You don't have to feed into it if you don't want to. You don't have to laugh. You don't have to do anything. But what you shouldn't do is internalize it, because we are, who we are is not static. It's not a static thing. It's something that changes every single day of our lives. And I found for me that mindset really helped me in my early 20s. I struggled with identity issues in my early 20s pretty bad. And that really helped me as a concept, just to understand that who we are is something that changes every single day. And so you're not really the same person you were when you were very fat. That's not true. And you're also not the person you were before you gained the weight in the first place. You're not the person you were 2 years ago. You're not the person you were before COVID. You're not the person you were before your first heartbreak. You know what I'm saying? You're not the person you were before your first great success. Like, experiences change us, and that's not a bad thing. That's just a part of life. We're not a static picture, we're a movie. And I think that that can really help. It really helped me. And I think that it is continuing to help me through the mids, because as I divorce myself from that, I just say, this isn't who I am anymore. I've become something new. I'm becoming something different, like I was the whole way, like I was every day of my life. It kind of takes some pressure off of it. So don't internalize it too much. I mean, we all have cringe eras and stuff, you know?
Imagine friends that used to hype you up and empower you all of a sudden start telling you you're doing too much and start acting weird towards you and even maybe a little jealous towards you. Imagine how.
So that can be tough. I do think it happens sometimes. I think in the Midsize Princess vibes and energies, sometimes we exaggerate this, or we may see it where it isn't there. But I do think there are going to be some people that feel that way, and that's something that's kind of their issue. It's not your issue. And like I said, I feel like I've experienced some things. I don't call it jealousy because I feel like that's too easy, but I experienced that wall or that masking that I didn't before, which is very interesting from a social perspective.
Having such bad trust issues because the way you get treated now by society is night and day from how you used to be treated. All I can do is.
So I don't know exactly why that would lead to trust issues. I think I'm just honestly probably having a hard time relating to her because I'm not exactly like the most trusting person in the world. Like, I'm very skeptical. I'm a very skeptical person. So it's like, I just don't get it, I guess, because I always was closed off, you know, basically. And I'm not like, I'm more open now than I used to be, but I'm still not like wide open. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I don't quite understand that, how that would lead to a trust issue. But I would say that developing trust issues based on size, it's not good to do. I just don't think it's a good thing. You want to live your life post weight loss. You want to have a full life. That's partly why you did it in the first place. So you have to make sure that you let that go.
Continue to heal and continue to be a kind person to everyone I meet, regardless of how they look.
I think that's true. So I think that those aspects are important as well, and definitely continue to heal. Like, I'm continuing myself. I'm just really focusing on it here because, like I said, I don't want to carry this with me into the thin side, you know, the other side. So, yeah, I hope you guys like this. Let me know what you think. Like I said, absolutely no hate on her whatsoever. I just think that these are important things to talk about, and it's an important topic. But I will talk to you guys later. Have a good rest of your day, night, etc. I'll see you tomorrow. Toodles. Toodles.